Welcome to the program. It is great to be with you. I'm very pleased to announce on this steamy evening here in the studios, the very, very pleasant studios of Town Square Media, Atlantic City's WPG Talk Radio 104.1 FM, 1450 AM, and throughout the world at WPGTalkRadio.com. It is time for another exciting episode, and not a moment too soon. There is so much in terms of our district, some of it sad news, some of it great news. Certainly the national scene, last week's Republican National Convention, will get the congressman's take. Tonight, if you're not following the action, there's almost bedlam on the floor of the Democratic National Convention right now. It's going absolutely wild as we speak. We'll get into some of that. Not to mention, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has to get out of town, but yet she's not too dinged up to get hired directly by Hillary Clinton for an honorary position of significance. And the person they've selected to gavel the Democratic National Convention into session, you can't make this stuff up. Truth is absolutely, every time, stranger than fiction. So we have a lot of questions for your distinguished Congressman Frank LoBiondo of the 2nd Congressional District. And we know that you have phone calls as well. 609-407-1450 phone lines are open. You never disappoint. Phone lines are booming right now at 609-407-1450. But before we go to your calls, let's give the Congressman an opportunity to say good evening. Congressman, welcome to your program.
Yes, thanks for doing this, Harry. Thanks for having me back. It's always a great opportunity to talk about some important topics and listen to some comments from constituents.
I want to get into this later, but I can't resist because I know beyond being just an outstanding public servant, you're also a very, very close study of politics and the workings of both sides of the aisle. And what did you think about more than 19,000 DNC documents? To be honest, some of them absolutely filthy in nature, anti-Semitic, racist. I mean, Donna Brazile, who is now the interim chair, about 1,000 times calls Bernie Sanders Senator stupid. I mean, unbelievable stuff. She had to call him, hey, I really apologize, Senator, for calling you Senator stupid 1,000 times. I'm your chairman now. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, can you?
No, and what is even more remarkable is how they tried to blame this on Trump and Putin, take no responsibility, typical, to take no responsibility whatsoever. And let me tell you, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's a member of Congress from Florida. I don't think I've ever said more than 2 words to her, probably not even 2 words, but I've observed and I've watched the arrogance, the caustic, abrasive, better than thou attitude of her walking around, and she tried to get in the face of our RNC chairman, and all these snide comments. Oh boy, I'll tell you, paybacks are hell.
Well, what's interesting? I mean, if we ever put you in the company of the 2nd Congressional District, if you were with your district, you would get a warm reception. They would clap for you. They'd be happy for you. Debbie Wasserman Schultz got booed off the stage by her own Florida delegation.
Yeah, and there's a question of whether she's going to lose her primary.
I hope she does.
Well, let me tell you what.
I pray for that.
When she says she's going to go back to be with her constituents, she's not kidding, because this would almost be unprecedented. And I'll tell you, she's got this arrogant, abrasive, holier than better than thou attitude, and She's getting some good feedback here.
We have so much content for you tonight in just now under an hour that we have with you. But as always, the whole point of Ask the Congressman, which is a monthly program presented in the interest of you, the public, by Town Square Media, Atlantic City, is to give you the opportunity to pose your questions and comments for your United States Congressman. I was going to promote him to Senator for some reason. I almost called you Senator. Who knows? Governor, Senator. Congressman Frank LoBiondo, 609-407-1450. Phone lines are open. Dan, welcome to Ask the Congressman. You're on the air.
Hi, Congressman LoBiondo.
Hi.
Said in the past these term limits because extended incumbency is a threat to democratic representation. Why do you feel that these term limits should not apply to you?
Oh, well, it's an interesting question. I think you might have been the same caller from a couple of days ago. And the answer is still the same. I am in favor of term limits. I have voted for term limits. I will vote for term limits again. And if it applies to all of Congress, I'd be happy to abide by it. There is something called an election every 2 years, and if people are that unhappy with me, they have an opportunity to voice their unhappiness or opposition by voting for my opponent. And I welcome the democratic process, and I'm happy to explain this repeatedly, and I hope you keep calling because the answer will be the same.
Hey, Dan, thanks for checking in. It's what the whole program's about, your opportunity to ask the congressman question asked and answered. 609-407-1450, open phone line. Phil is next for Congressman Frank LoBiondo. Phil, welcome to Ask the Congressman. You're on the air.
Hey, Congressman LoBiondo, how you doing? Just a quick question. Recently, the former Kiltone Company Superfund site was designated as a national priority by the Environmental Protection Agency. So what do you have to say to those living in that area who are affected potentially by this lead and this arsenic that is polluting the soil? Are they safe? And what are you specifically doing to mitigate this and work with the EPA? And also, what do you have to say to those members of your party that are so quick and willing to strip the EPA of its power and say that they want it to be abolished and completely deregulated? Is that something that you would support, or are you against that?
Well, my guess is by virtue of your question, you already know the answers to these. But we recently had Department of Interior bill. I was one of the ones who voted to support Superfund sites for the funding for the EPA, refused to strip the EPA for their ability to deal with this. To answer your question, is it safe for the people who are there? Well, obviously, if it's a Superfund site, there has to be a lot of testing and a lot of concern. But I'm not a scientist. I'm not someone who has the technical ability to determine that. But that's what we have the EPA for, and that's why we have departments of health. And I'll continue, as I have in the past, for any Superfund sites, especially in New Jersey, especially in the 2nd Congressional District, to do everything I can to get the monies appropriated, to work with Senator Booker, as I have, and Senator Menendez in the past, because we work together on all of these things and try to make sure there's remediation. So I'll continue to do that to the best of my ability.
Phil, thanks for checking in. It's about 95, 96 degrees outside. It's hot in here as well. No easy questions tonight. For Congressman Frank LoBiondo, at 13 minutes past the hour, we have an open phone line at 609-407-1450. Robin, you're on the air with United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Congressman, since you said that you're supporting the Republican nominee, what makes you think Donald Trump will make a great president? And also, what do you yourself have in mind for the future of public education in New Jersey?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. I'm very proud once again this year to be endorsed by the New Jersey Education Association. They are the teachers that are responsible for our children, and they believe that my voting record and my policies to support public education are exactly the right thing for the future of our children, and I'm very proud to be endorsed and supported by them once again. As far as the Donald Trump question, you know, it's really interesting. Nobody wants to talk about Hillary Clinton. I think Donald Trump has, I don't agree with him on a number of issues. I've not agreed with Republican nominees in the past on a number of issues. But if you compare Donald Trump to Hillary Clinton and what James Comey laid out on Hillary Clinton's emails and how you can't come to any other conclusion except that she lied repeatedly to the American people about her involvement with handling classified emails, reading classified emails, that is of the highest nature of sort of betrayal to the American people, because our enemies, and I'm on the House Intelligence Committee, know how terrible a situation this is. So I think when people, and we're seeing this now in the polls in battleground states like Ohio, where Mrs. Clinton has spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars, but millions and millions and millions of dollars, and the polls are dead even because she can't get out from under this "I don't trust you" that people feel about her, and she's done this to herself. So, yeah, Donald Trump has some problems, but when compared to Hillary Clinton, I'll support the Republican nominee any day.
Robin, thanks for your call. Thanks for, being with us tonight, and you have the opportunity to ask your congressman, Frank LoBiondo, at 16 minutes past the hour, 609-407-1450. Phone lines are open, 609-407-1450. Phone lines are open. Nick, you're on the air with United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo. Good evening.
Hi, Congressman LoBiondo. So I know a Donald Trump question was just asked, but I want to go back to that real quick. So you vowed to support the Republican nominee in the past. And, now that Donald Trump is the nominee, I'm just curious, what your favorite quality about Donald Trump is that you think, will ultimately benefit South Jersey. I mean, when you look at his past in Atlantic City, I mean, I think it kind of speaks for itself. So what about him do you think will...
All right, you're asking a question, now you're loading it. I mean, Nick, come on. At least pretend that you're not a seminar caller. Congressman, your answer. I apologize for jumping in. Thanks, Nick.
This is happening on all the talk radio shows I'm coming on.
It's called seminar callers.
It's called seminar callers. They have their questions that are handed to them. Listen, I'll go back again. When you look at Hillary Clinton and how dishonestly she handled any host of number of issues as Secretary of State and her position with those emails, and James Comey laid out an indictment that I don't know how it didn't follow through on this, and what she did on Benghazi when she lied to the parents of a couple of the people who were slain. I mean, really, you're going to ask these questions, and the Republican nominee will be far better. Donald Trump will be far better than Hillary Clinton in any variety of ways, because I don't think the country can trust somebody who's misled them on these emails and on the classified information, which is so sensitive to protecting our country.
We're going to take our first break. Please don't go away on the phone lines. I know how much the congressman is enjoying taking your phone calls tonight at 609-407-1450. More of your phone calls. We have a lot of questions. We're going to talk about some sad news, and that is the General Mills decision to close the Progresso plant in Vineland. We'll get the congressman's take. Vineland is a very, very important part of Congressman LoBiondo's district. This obviously is 370 or more employees. We're going to also talk about the Republican convention in Cleveland, because the congressman has made a decision I'm aware of for several different election cycles where he does not attend the conventions. We're going to ask him about that. We're going to talk about the current national security threat and a whole bunch more as United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo presents Ask the Congressman. Phone lines are open at 609-407-1450. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
WPG Talk Radio 104.1 presents Ask the Congressman. It's your opportunity to talk directly to Congressman Frank LoBiondo. Call 407-1450. Now, with Congressman Frank LoBiondo, here's Harry Hurley.
Thank you very much. On behalf of United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo, thanks for spending this portion of your evening with us. It's 22 minutes past the hour. It's been a gold rush of your phone calls for your United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo at 609-407-1450. Wayne is joining us now. Wayne, you're on with Congressman LoBiondo. Welcome to Ask the Congressman. Good evening.
Great, thank you. And I've got a question that's not about Trump or Hillary. The Progresso closing, and this is just my educated guess on it, that they're going to close it and then they're going to reopen the entire plant down in Texas, and they're going to start using Mexican tomatoes. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the cost of labor in New Jersey. It's all about the cost of New Jersey tomatoes versus the cost of Mexican tomatoes. And that's my take on it. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense from a money point of view. And I'm just wondering if the congressman has been in touch with General Mills and what the story is about that.
Hey, Wayne, thanks for checking in. And this literally was my first question for the congressman had we not had over 10 or 15 callers, all at the same time checking in. Congressman, your thoughts about Wayne's question?
Sure. So let me take a couple of minutes and sort of give my personal history with Progresso Foods. When I was operations manager for our family trucking business, they were on the original location in Vineland of Chestnut and the Boulevard. And I never drove our trucks long haul over the road, but a lot of local stuff. So I was constantly taking truckloads of empty containers into them to be filled with their different products, and the full truckloads of products back to our terminal, and got to know the operation extremely well. 1970, they moved to the new location. We continue to do business with them for years and years and years. And I'm struck by how repeatedly, and we'll go say the last 5 years, 8 years, how the parent company, when I would be visiting the plant, would have a representative there and telling me how dedicated the workforce was, telling me how everything was going so smoothly, telling me how all the products they were using that they could would be grown locally in Cumberland County and certainly in South Jersey. And then to find out at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon from the president of the Food and Commercial Workers Union, Brian String, who's a pretty good friend, that he had gotten notice that there would be a meeting the following morning, Friday morning at 7:30, and they were going to tell everybody that they were sending them home and closing the plant. They'd leave it closed for a day or two, bring people back to decide how they could close it permanently. Now, that's on the heels of a contract being recently negotiated and ratified in May, during which the company never mentioned there was any problem at the Vineland plant. Not that they needed concessions, not that they had trouble, not that there were money problems of any kind, any way, shape, or form. And almost to add insult to injury, representatives from General Mills had been in my Washington office rather recently, not an unusual thing, talking about legislation, not particularly, not at all focused on the Vineland plant, but sort of overall, and never mentioned anything. Yes, I did reach out to General Mills. They made it pretty clear that this decision is irreversible. The president of the union, Brian String, reached out to them as well, asked me if I would join in with him, Senator Van Drew, the mayor of Vineland, and maybe a couple of others. And I said, absolutely, to see what could be explored to keep the plant open. I happen to believe there's always a way to get the job done. There's always a way to find a solution. But if they refuse to even sit down and meet, I do not know what to do. Now, to your question about Mexican tomatoes, that may be true in part, but how many tomatoes can they use in a can of soup? They make a lot of different soup lines. And I don't doubt that they're going to use some kind of Mexican produce if it's a Texas plant. But I don't know that that can be the whole reason, because I'm assuming they make tomato soup, but I think that's probably not one of their major items in the soup line. So there's a lot that remains to be seen. We're continuing to press to attempt to see if, in fact, there is something. I talked to the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor reached out to General Mills, as I did. She got the same answer that I did. She indicated that she is willing, through the governor's office, to explore with them what it may take to keep the plant open. They have not shown any indication that they are willing to have any discussions at all. So, I mean, that tells you a lot right then and there. I think it's despicable about how they handled this.
Hey, thanks very much for your call, Wayne. We have Bob joining us now. Bob, welcome to the program. You're on the air with the Congressman. Go right ahead.
Thank you. It's an honor to ask a question to the Congressman. Regarding ethics and some of the antics we've seen politicians do, it seems like there's no punishment. So what is the Congress looking to do to put some teeth behind any ethics violations or conflicts of interest or influence peddling and all that we're seeing going on? What can Congress do?
Good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. So unfortunately, there are ongoing incidents with members of Congress doing things that are absolutely and totally unacceptable and wrong. But we're not a judicial body that has the ability to say convict them and send them to jail. We have the Ethics Committee, and in the most recent case involving a congressman from Philadelphia, Chaka Fattah, he was convicted on, I think, 15, 20 counts. And he sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi that he would resign from his committees, but that he would not resign his seat in Congress until sometime in October or November. What Congress did across the board, and these are Republicans and Democrats together, was basically say that if you do not resign immediately, you will be expelled. And we were prepared to have that vote to expel him the last week that Congress was in session. So I think Congress, the Ethics Committee, acted as it should. Now, there's another situation that has developed with a Democratic Congresswoman from Florida where her and her chief of staff have been indicted on some scheme with some charitable foundation that they weren't handling right, or, the feds caught up to it somehow. Now, that is still being adjudicated, but I think the same thing that happened with Chaka Fattah would happen with her if, in fact, she's convicted.
Bob, thanks for checking in. 609-407-1450. We're going to take two more phone calls. Callers that want to hold on, you can hold on for the next segment. We have a lot of questions that we haven't gotten to for the Congressman that we're going to get in there as well as the remaining half of the program continues. We're approaching 31 minutes past the hour. We'll be with you until a couple of minutes past the top of the next hour. 609-407-1450. Phone lines are open. Bill is next. Linda is on deck. Bill, welcome to Ask the Congressman. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for all the good work you do, Congressman, for our district.
Thank you.
Quick question, maybe you can help me understand. You work with Democrats every day, and it seems they're fine with undocumented immigrants coming into the country. They don't want to build a wall on our southern border. So why is it then they built a large barrier fence around their convention and you can only get in if you have the proper documents?
4 miles and 8 feet high for the party that does not believe in walls. Pretty ironic, Congressman, isn't it?
Pretty ironic. Well,
and you need photo ID to get in.
You need photo ID,
but not to vote, thougthough.
Yeah, not to vote.
Don't do that.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Bill, you're on a roll, man.
I don't know.
Good question.
Okay. Sometimes the truth is self-evident. Linda is next. Linda, I was thinking about you because 4 years ago, the Democratic National Convention booed God and voted against God 3 times in a row. And they only carried on the 4th after the chair lied and said that the ayes had it when it didn't. Now we begin 4 years later, and the moment that the name Hillary Clinton was mouthed at the during the invocation, the crowd erupted in boos, probably 40% or more of the crowd. So interesting times we're living in. Linda, it's Ask the Congressman. You're on the air.
Clearly interesting times. Hi, Harry. Hi, Congressman, and thank you for supporting Donald Trump and not being a never-Trumper. I mean, since this guy, it wasn't given to Donald Trump. He worked hard for it. I think he is experiencing divine guidance, truthfully, with what he's overcome and the money that he's overcome. That being said, my question to you is, I know you were in Bangladesh the day before that atrocity occurred. I heard you were. And if that's so, that's interesting. What is the level of threat that we're facing here in America with Muslim terrorists?
Oh, another outstanding question, Linda. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a very high threat, it's probably at about 30, 40, or 50. The chart does not measure, and you are correct. I was in Bangladesh. And I did leave about 12 hours before the attack took place. Chairing the CIA subcommittee, we get briefings in Washington on a regular basis that are very politically correct and almost impossible to get the full story on what is working, what isn't working, and what the situation is in some of these critical areas on the ground. And in Bangladesh, they had experienced something like 4 or 5 ISIS attacks in the last 6 months prior to the last one. And it was pretty clear that ISIS was looking to make Bangladesh an official affiliate. And in order to get the proper and accurate information, then I was asked to get on the ground there and talk to our folks who are handling the problem and dealing with it. And, I don't like to be doom and gloom, and I don't like to, try to scare people about the level of the threat, but it is enormous. And this is all a result of the administration's policy allowing ISIS to have safe haven in Syria, Raqqa in particular, for years, to be able to have a source of revenue unfettered for years. So the damage has really been done. While we may be making modest gains territorially, they have been able to do their social media recruiting, radicalization. They have been able to bring people who have foreign passports from other countries, Europe, and maybe even the U.S., over there for training and radicalization and send them back. That's what we're seeing. A lot of what's happening either directly ordered by ISIS or ISIS inspired. And it's like the toothpaste has come out of the tube. How do you put it back in? So our policies are way lagging behind the threat and how we should deal with it. And it's an honor to be able to serve on House Intelligence and be asked to do some of these missions, so to speak. But it's pretty scary about what it means to the world of how these people have been allowed to have free reign.
Linda, we're going to get 2 more calls in before our break, and then the last segment of the program, we have a gold rush of questions for the Congressman. We have the 2 calls that we will get in before the break. We have Ginny and we have Craig in that order. Ginny, welcome to Ask the Congressman. You're on the air.
Hey, Congressman, I wanted to ask you, you were mentioning Mr. Fattah earlier. That wasn't my original question, but if Mr. Fattah is outed from Congress, will he continue to receive lifetime benefits and a pension?
Well, he is out of Congress. He resigned. Now, I don't know how many years he's been in Congress, and the congressional formulas are the same for members of Congress as they are for federal employees. So I don't know that if there's a conviction, which there was, and he goes to jail, if he forfeits, that's a good question. I'll try to look into that. But he has resigned from Congress.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because you hear people like Anthony Weiner continue to collect and continue to, live very well even when they're outed.
But he was not convicted, though. Anthony Weiner was not convicted.
But he was kicked out, Harry.
Well, but that's different, though. There's a difference. I believe, and I'm going to look it up, and if we don't get it tonight, I promise I'll get it for you from the Congressman, and I'll report back on early in the morning. I believe if you are convicted of a felony, you do forfeit your congressional pension, I believe. I'm not sure, though, because, look, we've seen people impeached as judges, and they're members of Congress now.
Yeah, from Florida, Alcee Hastings.
Yes. Yeah, so I don't want to confirm what I just said. I'm going to look it up, and Congressman is going to get us an answer as well. What else, Ginny?
Okay, and one more thing, if I may.
Yeah.
Why did you vote in favor of the omnibus package?
I voted in favor of the omnibus package because it was the first time we got the president to crack and add money for national defense and our military. Our military is in a hard situation with readiness. I don't know if you've seen some of the clips of the cannibalization of some of our fighter jets that are taking place by the Marines. And although I wasn't fond of parts of this, you will notice that a good chunk of the Republicans who voted for it were on the Armed Services Committee or directly related to what it did for our ability to better defend this country, which is sorely lacking right now. So that was the main motivation.
Ginny, thank you. I got to run. We have time for one more call. I'm sorry. I know I heard you breathe. You wanted to speak again, but we've got to go. Craig, your question for the Congressman. Go.
Okay. Congressman, I'd just like to thank you for getting the extension on the contract down there for NAFAC for another year. You're the reason why I support you in our Atlantic County district, because you do bring jobs and keep jobs here. My question is that with everything that we're seeing with the DNC and that Russia, going into and hacking their emails, my question is, when you bring that in front of Congress, will you also bring it up in front of Congress that the people were denied fairness in the democratic process over there for the Democratic Party?
Well, if I'm understanding that the people were denied, Democrats were denied due process within their own party, is that what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Congress would get into something like that. It would, if Republicans initiated it, you can imagine that, and I'm just, the first time I'm reacting to this, I'm just thinking out loud as we're going along here, that it would be viewed as Republicans cannot be objective and we're trying to somehow hang Democrats out to dry. I think what you saw with the former chair of the Democrat National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they're going to have their own revenge on that kind of situation, and the Bernie Sanders supporters are none too happy.
Well, wouldn't that be like misconstruing funds when the funds were supposed to go to Bernie Sanders and then they went to Hillary?
But they're not taxpayer funds.
Okay. I had to ask you that question.
Thank you, Craig. We got to go to break. I have an answer, a partial answer, regarding the Congressman Fattah. Prior to 2007, and Congressman LoBiondo knows all of these other people, Representative Jim Traficant, Representative Dan Rostenkowski, you might all remember out there the post office scandal, Congressman Randy Duke Cunningham, who was just a prince of a man, and that was very sad, his conviction. They were all convicted of crimes, but all remained eligible for their pension. What happened was citizens started flipping out about this, and so in 2007, there was this Honest Leadership and Open Government Act of 2007, which Congressman LoBiondo is well aware of, and this deprives members of Congress convicted of certain crimes involving corruption. Now, it used to be the only way a member of Congress, they could rob a bank, you could commit any crime whatsoever, as long as it was not a crime that jeopardized the national security, and you would keep your pension. Chaka Fattah may literally be, because he has more than 20 years that you need to get a pension, he literally may be the first to forfeit his pension. That's what's being reported right now. That's the latest on that. 41 minutes past the hour, our final break. Phone lines are shut down at this point. We've taken, I can't even tell you how many phone calls we have taken in the first 40 minutes of the program. We have a lot of ground to cover with the Congressman as Ask the Congressman continues on WPG. Talk Radio 104.1 FM, 1450 AM, and throughout the world at WPGTalkRadio.com.
WPG Talk Radio 104.1 presents Ask the Congressman. It's your opportunity to talk directly to Congressman Frank LoBiondo. Call 407-1450. Now, with Congressman Frank LoBiondo, here's Harry Hurley.
With United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo, it is 46 minutes past the hour. Congressman, last week, the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, and now that we see what's going on with these 19,000 emails, Julian Assange and WikiLeaks is promising many, many more. And the way that this convention, imagine if last week began with the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus, being kicked out, booed out of the convention. The national media would be going just absolutely, it would be nirvana, apoplectic. They'd be going absolutely berserk. You have opted not to attend in recent years. Tell us why that is. And then also, though I know you paid attention to it, tell us your reaction to last week's convention.
Well, I've gotten the question a lot about not attending the convention, and people think it's got something to do with the nominee or some of that. It doesn't. The only two conventions I've ever attended were close by, Philadelphia and New York. And I think New York might have been like 12 years ago or something like that. So it's sort of not my scene, Harry. I know there's a lot of hoopla, but I love the district. I can get a lot of work done, as I did last week. Now, the Progresso thing broke last week. You can't handle those things from an atmosphere like Cleveland. So it's just always sort of been my nature to stick close to home, and very happy that it went well. And, it is remarkable because people were expecting everything to go sideways in Mountain and Cleveland.
And it's happening here.
And now
they've had unbelievable protests.
Now it's happening here.
They're having the floor stuff. They're having the unrest. They couldn't even have their chairman gavel the convention. I mean, imagine this. And I believe the Bernie Bros, as they call them, they're going to be going wild tonight.
Well, and think about this. All of this, and the convention hasn't been gavelled in for 2 hours.
I know.
It's not even 2 hours.
Congressman, they had more protests prior to their convention gaveling into session than the Republicans did over 4 days.
Well, it's very interesting, and
everything they thought was going to happen, they wanted to have happen to Republicans, is now happening with the Democrats.
Right.
What did you think, though, in general? Because this was not a traditional. I made a comment this morning that I haven't heard anybody in the media at any level, local, metro, or national, come up with. It just came to me this morning, Congressman, that there was no keynote address for Donald Trump's convention. Think about that. There were a lot of great speakers, from our friend Governor Christie to Newt to Rudy Giuliani to all the Trump children, Melania, all the great speeches. Some were non-traditional, type business people and so on, but there was no keynote address.
Well, I think it goes along with how Donald Trump's style is, that he's not bound by tradition of politics as it went before. Why did millions of people who have never participated in a primary, never voted before, come out and register Republican where they had to, or cross over to vote for Donald Trump? Broke all kinds of records because
every record he broke.
Because the guy is not traditional in politics, and as much as the other side wants to hate it, as we can tell by evidence by some of the earlier callers, they're just beside themselves that this individual has been so successful and essentially is tied in the polls with Hillary Clinton, who was supposed to be walking away with this.
Yeah.
So this all goes to his style of being unconventional and trying to relate more to everyday people.
Interesting to note, not since President Bush has there been a Republican nominee for president get the bounce. We're going back, and not even President Bush's second in his reelection bid, which obviously was successful, and we know he was a two-term president, but his 2000 convention was the one that gave him an 8-point boost. Trump is almost right there now, and there are still a lot of other polls that are going to bake in over the next couple of days. Mitt Romney only got a 2-point bounce. This is the biggest bounce for a Republican nominee in 16 years.
It's big. It's huge.
It is huge. If I split you down the middle, and I mean this as just such a high compliment to you, Congressman LoBiondo, your constituent service is second to none out of what I call the 536 Club, which counts the 100 senators and the 435 in the House. I put your constituent service, your voting attendance record, and your quality voting record in the very, very near 100 percentile, because nobody's perfect. I'll give you like 99.99 and a few more decimal points. I mean, you're right there in my estimation to near perfection in terms of representing the district, providing excellence in service in terms of constituent service. But there is another half, that I would say doesn't get as much attention, and that is your bona fides in security matters, military affairs, and all of these things, many of which are top secret in nature, so we don't get to find out about them. But I see you as successfully balancing both of those in a very impressive way. I know it's, a shining compliment, but your thoughts?
Well, thanks for noticing. And just so everybody understands, it's always people before politics. It's always the district first. So when it comes to the particulars of the district, jobs in the economy, firefighters, police, beach replenishment, FAA, Coast Guard, all of these things, they're always a top priority. But always in Congress, but especially after September 11th, I've had a passion for protecting the country, for national defense, for homeland security. And while I tried for a long time to get on the House Intelligence Committee and succeeded 6 years ago, that's sort of been another level that I never could have imagined I'd have the opportunity to work on. And it's motivating, it's challenging, it's extremely rewarding, and it's something that I don't want to suggest anything is unimportant, but if we're not protecting the country, if we're not doing our best to deal with terrorists who want to do us harm, then a lot of other things kind of go by the wayside.
And you really do, and I'm not broaching anything that's classified when I say this, you really do get the opportunity to see how dangerous the enemy is and how much ill they wish us.
I do. And, once again, for our listeners to understand, we get briefings in Washington that are very politically correct. when one of the 17 House intelligence agencies, and there are 3 or 4 major ones, asks for a reprogramming change, it has to be cleared by the committee. And if we're not getting all the answers, and the reality is because of the administration not being forthcoming on a lot of these issues, we're skeptical of how we're switching monies around without having confirmation from the field. Now, as politically correct as the people in Washington are, that's just the opposite with people in the field. And it was made clear to me when I was being offered the opportunity to serve on House Intelligence that this was the one committee that really required and you were expected to commit to traveling. And reality is some of my colleagues on House Intelligence won't go to some of the places I go to, and I think it's important to get that firsthand information from the people who are on the ground, who are not afraid to call the shots like they are. If they think we've got a wrong policy, if they think we're headed in the wrong direction, I get it in very graphic, understandable terms. And if they think what we're doing we need to double down on because it's the right way, they'll give me that as well. And there is no substitute for getting there and being face-to-face with these people, immersing myself in exactly what it is that they're doing, to have that understanding, to bring back to my colleagues on the committee and to the intelligence agencies that we're working with.
You basically never miss a vote, do you?
Well, I have. I missed, I think as a freshman, 6 votes on a Friday when I had a kidney stone attack and literally couldn't walk. I missed in separate times. I missed votes when my dad died and he was being buried, when my wife's mother died and she was being buried, and when her father died and he was being buried. And there were no way to avoid missing those votes. But I take the responsibility of voting for the 750,000 people I represent very seriously. And by the way, for our listeners, it's easy to research the record of what members of Congress, what votes they miss, and you're entitled to give an explanation if you miss a vote. So you can get up and be recognized and say, Mr. Speaker, I'd like the record to reflect that I missed roll call vote, whatever it was, and these were the reasons why. And in the cases I missed votes, I did that. So the record was pretty clear. But everybody has to answer to their own district and their own constituents. And in a representative democracy where people are expecting me to represent them, voting is basic and essential that you've got to do unless there's some compelling reason you can't.
So you are literally way high in the 99+ percentile.
Something like that,
I would think, based on
Yes.
what I know. I've looked at your record. And not to put any of your colleagues down, but you do have colleagues that routinely miss votes.
Well, I listened to some of them say that, we're going to be voting, we're told we're going to be voting till 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, and around 10 or 11 o'clock, one of them says, I can't hang out anymore, I'm leaving. And I shake my head and say, I don't understand how you get away with this. I mean, if it goes to 2 a.m., if it goes to 4 a.m., if it goes all night, as it has on occasion, that's what you have to do. So the last vote I missed was 2013, and I've had missed a total of 30 votes out of 14,000.
That's what I said. I'll do the math, and I'll report back on early in the morning. We have a few minutes, actually, because we're going to go a little past.
And by the way, just because you mentioned it, the percentage is 99.79.
I knew it was high, 99. Yeah. I mean, I did the math quick. Now, to show the difference between what we were talking about, your constituent service versus some of these other important duties that no doubt they're very, very important, but you can't let them get in the way of true constituent service, because that is why the People's House is supposed to be closest to the citizens. Here are 2 examples that I picked out for tonight's program. Recently, you helped to procure fire department grants. I'd like you to talk about that. And there's also a very cool competition that you do, the Congressional App Challenge, that is very exciting. And I know that high schools really, it's very coveted, and they really enjoy competing. I'd like you to talk about that.
Sure. Well, the the fire service grants are through FEMA, and this is something that's been going on for a number of years. I would like to see us be able to increase the monies that are made available across the country. But it's a very competitive program. Each year, FEMA determines what the criteria will be for the analysis of the grant applications. We then hold a seminar. I don't know how many other members do this, but we ask FEMA to come in here to our district. They do very readily. And we invite all of the fire companies from all of the 8 counties to come in and listen to the presentation and ask the questions before they fill out the grant applications. We have been enormously successful in this district. I think over the years, it's something like $25 million. We had a couple recently. And to give you an example, many of our listeners maybe haven't heard of a town called Cedarville. It's in Cumberland County. It's in the western part of the district. It's in Lawrence Township. They got a grant of over $140,000. These are volunteers who make hoagies and cupcakes and do all kinds of things to get the equipment and the gear that they need to be able to comply, because the mandates for complying don't go away because you're a small department. And what this would mean to the tax base is just enormous. So it's been an honor to be involved with these. It's paid and volunteer, but to be involved with these first responders who are willing to put their lives on the line, and it's something we put a lot of emphasis on.
This is going to be a follow-up to what guest listener Linda was talking about with you, that you were in Bangladesh. You were there just mere hours before the terrorist attack and the hostage situation left at least 20 people dead. We've had the horrific truck attack in Nice. We've had what seems to be almost daily terrorist attacks in Germany these days. I think it's starting to show that all of those nations that followed the Obama doctrine of going passive with the radical terrorist enemy are paying a heavy price.
They are. And when these terrorist organizations, and there are a number of them, but sort of the two that most people recognize are ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but there's Khorasan and there's Al-Shabaab and there's a host of them. They've declared war on the world in a most barbaric way possible. And to not recognize, first of all, call it what it is, and recognize what the threat is and how these people are willing to sacrifice themselves and children and everything else to kill Americans and blow up Westerners and do all of these horrific things that they do is not doing a service to the people that we represent. And I've been critical of the Obama administration on this national security front for a long time. They've known where the oil revenues are coming from in Syria with ISIS. They refuse up until recently to do anything about it. And this pulling out of Iraq just because there was a campaign promise when every general in the Pentagon said it was the wrong thing to do was essentially where the birth of ISIS came from. So we've got to get our house in order. We've got to get our policy straight. We've got to understand the threat for what it is. We've got to call the enemy what they are, yep. And we've got to deal with it, or this thing is only going to get worse.
Congressman, do you agree our generals, they knew what a mistake it was to give up the gains in Iraq? They knew. Across the board, they knew. And the recommendations to the administration were totally different than what Mr. Obama decided to do. And that's what's happening in Afghanistan now. And here's what we now have, ladies and gentlemen. Depending, if you ask some pointy-headed, professor, they will say there's 6 continents because they will take the fact of Europe and Asia because it's one landmass and they'll treat it as one continent. I've always grown up being taught there were 7 continents. So either way, if you want to combine the two and say there's 6, or go with tradition and say there's 7, ISIS is now on 5 continents. They would be on 0 if we did not let the gains go in Iraq. Congressman, tough question, but true or false?
True.
Has to be true.
True.
And this is unconscionable that this world has become what we now see, where machete dicing is happening like every day. We have these horrific things. They're thinking of ways with these very dangerous low target type hits now that are causing massive type casualties and deaths. And let's not forget what this whole specter has done in the Obama doctrine in terms of putting police officers in terrible danger in our country. It's horrible.
Well, it has. And there has to be a real strong reversal of direction, of understanding that we've got to let our military, if the president, and I'd like to take him at his word, saying that we're going to defeat ISIS, well, there's a way to do that. And he can't say, well, we'll defeat ISIS only if it's done in according to my doctrine with these criteria that doesn't allow it to work.
Now, you heard what Hillary Clinton said. This is scary, that one of two people that could be the 45th president of the United States, this is her plan. She's going to defeat ISIS with love. Yeah. Now, listen, I'm a lover. You're a lover. You love people. You love your wife. You love your family. You love dogs better than and more well-rounded than some people love people. You're a lover, but you're not going to defeat ISIS with love.
No, you're not. You're not, and it's a fundamental flaw in understanding what the threat is. And that's what I think is leading across the world. You know, what policies in Germany, policies in France. This stuff wasn't by accident that they're having these attacks there. You know, allowing Syrian refugees in unfettered when you cannot do any background checks. And the ISIS terrorists have said, we're going to use the refugee problem to put our terrorist fighters in with normal refugees.
Congressman Frank LoBiondo, what an hour plus. It flies by, doesn't it?
It sure does. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, your Congressman Frank LoBiondo shall return for our August program, already set for Tuesday, August 23rd in the 5 o'clock hour. On behalf of our distinguished Congressman, United States Congressman Frank LoBiondo of the 2nd Congressional District, humbly yours. I am Harry Hurley. Mark Levin continues right now, and I'll see you in just a few hours for Hurley in the Morning. We have some great stuff tomorrow. Wake up then. See ya.